Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now guys, this is a never-ending tale regarding the Nigerian narrative. So I have brought you the first installment of this story, which was put out there by the former INEC chairman, Professor Jega. So now this is now Fani-Kayode responding to him, because of course Fani-Kayode has an opinion on everything that is going on within the Nigerian space, and this particular narrative is no different. So with that guys, I bring you this. Nothing can stop Nigeria's breakup. It's only a question of time. Fani-Kayode replies Jega. So that's the headline. Nothing can stop Nigeria's breakup. It's only a question of time. And that is Fani-Kayode responding to an earlier article put out there by Professor Atihiru Jega. So now let's see what Femi has to say this time around. Former Aviation Minister Fani-Kayode has said that the prediction that Nigeria would break up was still going to come to pass. He added that it was only a matter of time before the prediction would be fulfilled. However, the former minister said that the condition that would help Nigeria to continue to exist as one country would be the restructuring of the country. He was reacting to the warning on Wednesday in Abuja by the former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), Professor Atihiru Jega, who said predictions that Nigeria would break up in 2015 could become a reality if measures were not taken to avoid such happening. But responding in a tweet on his verified Twitter account at RealFFK, Fani-Kayode said, "Nothing can stop it. It is only a question of time. If you want us to stay as one, then restructure the country and stop treating Southerners and Middle Belters like slaves." So now this is now Fani-Kayode responding to an article that was put out there by Atihiru Jega. I did actually do a video on that article by Atihiru Jega, which I have not posted yet. I might well post it before this one or after this one, but please look out for it. But Atihiru Jega then put out this narrative based on the CIA predictions back in 2014 thereabout, or 2013 even, that Nigeria was not going to last up till 2015 before it disintegrates, because the country was in such a perilous position. You remember, of course, that was during the Chibok girls and all these at the very height of Boko Haram and all this chanting by the governors that were after Goodluck Jonathan. So the country was in a real chaotic state. So the expectation then was that the country would break up by 2015, because they were expecting, of course, Goodluck Jonathan to return himself into government to hold on to the Aso Rock seat, and then Mualam Buhari and his tribesmen, of course, to then react with even more heavy-duty acts of insurgency, which a lot of people attributed the name Buhari to at that time. You will recall at that time that when the government was trying to negotiate with Boko Haram nominated Buhari as the person to speak for them, and he said he was rejecting that. So they feel an affinity at least towards him, if not an affiliation towards him. If there's no affiliation there certainly was, I'm not sure if there still is, an affinity there. So all of that mix was what led to that CIA prediction that Nigeria would disintegrate by 2015. But 2015 came and went because Goodluck Jonathan, of course, decided to sidestep them and sideswipe them as well, to then hand over that power to Buhari and say, okay, you want it, have it, let's see what you make of it. And we have all, of course, seen what Buhari has made of it now. Fulanization, brutalization, poverty capital of the world. You all know the narrative of Nigeria, rigged elections and all whatnot. The country has been completely bastardized. We've all seen that. So now, this is now recurring again, especially off the back of that 2019 election, which is the poorest election that has ever been held in the history of Nigeria. And even though the election that was superintended by Atihiru Jega was heavily rigged as well, because Buhari, of course, did not win. We all saw the underage voting in Kano State, which was supervised by the former Inspector General of Police, which was what led to him being rewarded with with the position. Ibrahim, what is his name again? That's something Ibrahim, the former IG. Anyway, he was the commissioner of police for Kano State then, and he supervised that election in Kano then. And we all saw virtually every polling booth was completely filled with like underage children, which you could visibly see with your eyes that were underage, and these were the people that were voting. So we also what happened in Kano State, and the election, of course, for Kano State should have been completely cancelled in 2015 because there was really no election that took place. They just had all these kids going and thumped their fingers, and that was what happened. And Atihiru Jega saw that too. So that was a completely false and very poor election in 2015, but the 2019 one was even worse. So what this Atihiru Jega is saying in effect is that as bad as that 2015 election was, this 2019 now is even worse, and if 2023 follows this trajectory, then there's really no point in the people going out to vote, because there's already apathy towards the voting system within the Nigerian state, because the Nigerian people are already, and most of them have actually in actual fact come to the conclusion that their vote actually counts for nothing. And we've seen that in Osun State, in Ekiti State, all over the country, even with the presidency, when the people will vote for the person that they want, but the powers that be will say that no, they would put the person that they prefer instead. So we saw it with Senator Adeleke, we saw it with Fayemi, who lost to that Fayoshe's protege in that election, but they foisted him anyway. We saw it with the Atiku Buhari thing. So the vote of the Nigerian person does not actually count in an election effectively, is what we have within the Nigerian state, and more so now than ever before, because the rigging this time round is so crude and cack-handed that is so obvious that people can see. And especially the highlight of that are two elements. The Osun State one, which was so glaring, the people voted for this person and you say no. And in Kano State as well, Dola Ganduje lost the election, but they said they are going to recount and rerun or whatever. They do all these magic tricks, and suddenly the person that the people are voting out is returned, and the person that the people is voting for is just dismissed to the sidewalks of life. So now this is now the structure of the Nigerian electoral system now, and the people are now coming to the conclusion that there's absolutely no point in us going out to vote, because this actually means and counts for nothing. If we go out and stand in the sun all day and then we say we prefer this person, but then you say no, that person is not the person I want, I am going to choose the person I want, then what's the point of the vote? So this is now what is now recurring really, and since 1999, by the way, there's never really been any real election. The 1999 election was not really an election. The soldiers picked Obasanjo and put him in there just to reward the Yoruba people for what happened to Abiola and to settle down the polity. So we know that the Obasanjo 99 election was no election at all. It was just the military picking somebody that they're comfortable with, who was also a Yoruba man, to try and just correct that Abiola thing. So that was what happened then. And then of course the election then after 1999, I think 2004 thereabout, that was just Obasanjo just having his own way. So that was no election as well. So now the election now in 2008, 2009 that brought in Yar'Adua, even Yar'Adua himself, the winner of that election, said it was rigged in. So if Yar'Adua himself, the winner of the election, said he was rigged in, then really there's nobody that can then come and say that anything different happened. So the real election really that has any real credibility was the first Goodluck Jonathan election, which he won. So he won that election fair and square, because the people were saying, okay, let's give this guy a chance, and they did give him a chance, by the way, and he won right across the length and breadth of the Nigerian state, including the northern regions as well. And this is a guy from the middle belt, by the way, not from the middle belt, rather from the south south. This is a guy from the south south, by the way. So he had no electoral constituency. There's absolutely nobody in the south, in the south. He's just woman and his dog really. But the reasoning for voting for this guy is that, look, this is the region where the wealth of the country comes from, and this guy is inoffensive, he's quite compliant, so he will do as we will and he will do as we tell. And this is an opportunity to also show these people of the south that, look, we acknowledge that you're part of the country, and we acknowledge that the wealth of this country comes from your region. So here's your son, he he can have a go at the presidency, so that you can then have that sense that you've had a president too. So that was what happened, and that was probably the most credible election that we've had since 1999, really since the Abiola election. In fact, that was the most credible election since the Abiola election, because the 1999 one was not really an election, it was more a selection. The militaries putting somebody that they are comfortable with to sit on top of what they are describing as a democracy, just to settle things down as they pack their dollar bags and their bullion vans and make a clean exit. And of course, they knew that they could trust Obasanjo not to rock the boat too much. So it was a safe pair of hands that they trusted and would satisfy the Yoruba yearnings, because you don't get more Yoruba than a name like Olusegun. So they just put him in there just for reasons of expediency. So he was just put in there for expediency. He was never elected, because the Yorubas, of course, don't like Obasanjo. He may well be loved in the north, but the Yorubas don't like him, and the Igbos, I don't think they like him either, because you remember that is also a name that recalls from the Civil War, and the Igbos hate any name that recalls from the Civil War outside of Ojukwu. So if not Ojukwu or an Igbo person or a Biafra type person, then they just hate him. So the Igbos hate Obasanjo, the Yorubas hate him, but the Northerners who were in power then, they were comfortable with him. He was one of their own, and they just installed him. So that was not so the only election that I'm saying in effect was the first election, the only credible election that I am saying in effect that has ever been conducted in Nigeria since the June 12 one that Abiola won. So the only credible election since then was the one that brought in Goodluck Jonathan for his first substantive presidency, because of course, you know, he became president after the death of Yar'Adua, but he never really ran an election up to the point that he became president. And by the way, that's the story of that guy. He was always a deputy who then became the principal, having then seen the head of that position either leave or die. So that's been his story, and he took that story all the way to the presidency. But in fairness to him, the first election that he did contest, he did win that one. But then that was the only credible election. In fact, we've only really had two credible elections in the history of Nigeria. The June 12 one, the Abiola one, and the first Goodluck Jonathan election that he contested as a principal running for the presidency. Those are the only two credible elections that we have ever had in the history of Nigeria. But now, since 1999, the electoral process has been regressing and regressing, and the people come out and vote, and the person that they vote for does not emerge as the winner. The person that has the popular vote does not emerge as the winner. So then, of course, the confidence of the people are completely now lost in that process. So now this is the narrative now of this storyline that is going on between Atihiru Jega and Fani-Kayode, although Fani-Kayode is just poke-nosing because he's always poking his nose. But this is the storyline that is going on in that sphere at the moment, and this is what I am inviting you to come share thoughts on. Conversations in the comment section. Let me know what you are making of what Atihiru Jega is saying, that Nigeria could disintegrate, and Fani-Kayode is echoing this. But what are your thoughts? Come share those thoughts, as I said. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns grey. Bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you are making of this narrative in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Join you in the comment section. But here I say peace.